Federal District Court of Brooklyn, Monday, 7:45 a.m. Aaliyah Green was bent over, carefully wiping dust off the defendant's table when the rear courtroom door banged open, a heavy thud that made her flinch. A prosecutor in a gray suit entered, carrying a leather briefcase, not even glancing at her. Behind him was a thin, trembling man with round glasses, Mr. Raymond O'Gundy, the owner of a small corner store on Flatbush, today's defendant. If you believe that justice can start with an ordinary person, like this video and subscribe so we can continue sharing the untold stories that matter. Aaliyah quickly gathered her mop bucket, preparing to leave, when she heard a murmur behind her. The defense attorney still hasn't shown up? The courtroom gradually filled. A group of suited officials entered, among them the stern-faced judge and a representative from the city government. "We'll postpone this hearing until the defense has counsel present," the judge announced. Mr. O'Gundy bowed his head, hands clenched tightly together, as if trying to disappear into his seat. No one noticed the janitor standing near the exit, gripping a crumpled piece of paper she just picked up while cleaning, a tax document that didn't match the one submitted in court that morning. Aaliyah stepped toward the center of the courtroom. "Your Honor, may I say something?" All eyes turned. She was still wearing her navy blue uniform, hair tied back, shoes scuffed with bleach stains. A security officer near the aisle scoffed. "What? You want to mop over time?" Aaliyah didn't flinch. She held the paper high. "I believe there's a discrepancy in the case documents, and I have proof." The judge narrowed his eyes. "And who are you?" "Aaliyah Green. I studied financial management at Howard. I didn't finish my degree, but I read this document this morning and spotted something unusual." The prosecutor burst out laughing. "You dug something out of the trash and think you're a forensic accountant?" A few chuckles rippled through the gallery, but the judge raised a hand. "Let me see the document." He read. His eyes paused on the final line, lips tightening. After a long, heavy silence, he lowered his glasses. The tax record submitted to the court lists a different figure than Ms. Green's copy. A discrepancy of $27,000. "We will need to verify that," the prosecutor stammered. The judge looked down at the hunched-over man, Mr. O'Gundy, exhausted, eyes glossy with defeat. "This court will grant a 24-hour postponement. In the meantime, the defendant may have temporary representation." Aaliyah looked around. The room was silent. "If no one else will, I'll accept that responsibility." A 28-year-old black woman, no degree, no seat at the table, no title, had just done what the entire system never expected. She stood up. The judge's gavel came down. "Temporary representation granted. But Ms. Green, be prepared. Tomorrow, you'll be facing the full weight of this justice system." The dim glow from the desk lamp cast shadows over a pile of documents spread across the dining table. Beside it sat a half-eaten bowl of cold noodles, the faint smell of muscle rub lingering in the damp air. Aaliyah leaned on her elbows, eyes scanning each faded line of text with focus. Signs of payroll edits, mismatched transfer, timestamps. She circled the lines with a red marker. On the screen of her old, battered laptop was the city's tax data portal, something she had become familiar with back in college, before her father went bankrupt and her family lost everything. Back then, she dropped out her final year and worked whatever job she could find, waitress, night shift guard, and eventually a part-time janitor at the federal courthouse. She thought she had left her dreams behind. Until today, a low battery warning blinked on the screen. She plugged in the charger, but the outlet was loose, requiring several adjustments before it connected. In the quiet, her mother's faint voice called from the next room. "Aaliyah, are you staying up late again?" "No, Mama, go back to sleep. I'm just looking at something." She knew she didn't have the legal right to represent someone in court, but the law did allow for temporary representation if a defendant was without counsel, provided the court approved. And today, the court had approved. She opened a new browser tab and searched the accounting firm responsible for Mr. O'Gundy's taxes. Suddenly, a familiar name popped up. Marcus Bell, an auditor who had once worked with the city's commercial property assessment program, a program that had previously been investigated for favoring large developers taking over small neighborhood properties. She muttered to herself, and now they want to wipe out an old African man's corner store to put in a luxury brand shop. She printed the files, stapled them neatly, and placed them into a worn-out folder she once used for job interviews. Looking in the mirror, she saw herself, dark circles under her eyes, hair hastily tied back, a faded sweater. But her gaze was no longer that of a cleaning woman. "I'm not a lawyer," she whispered to her reflection, "but I know when someone's being pushed off the edge because they have no voice." She stood, slid the folder in her backpack, and zipped it carefully. Before turning off the lamp, she glanced toward her sleeping mother, whose frail hand hung off the side of the bed. "Tomorrow, I won't let them take anything else. Not from Mr. O'Gundy. Not from Mama." Federal Court of Brooklyn, 8:55 a.m. The courtroom was packed. Every seat in the gallery was taken. Members of the press had quietly slipped in, not for the case itself, but because of the story going viral on Twitter. Janitor demands to represent defendant in court. Many showed up just to watch what they assumed would be a spectacle. She walked in, wearing a white shirt, old but neatly pressed, gray slacks, her hair tied in a bun. In her hands was a thick, battered folder. No one laughed, but the stares were sharp. The first to approach her was Prosecutor Linda Carver, golden blonde hair, eyes sharp as knives. She looked Aaliyah up and down, then smirked. "Swapping your mop for legal paperwork today?" Aaliyah didn't answer. She met Carver's gaze directly, then walked over to the defense table. The judge banged the gavel. "Court is now in session. Ms. Carver, you may proceed." Linda began, her voice clear, arguments crisp. She laid out a string of evidence accusing Mr. O'Gundy of falsifying income to evade small business taxes over the last 3 years. Aaliyah listened carefully, taking notes without interrupting. When her turn came, she stood. A few quiet coughs, a few eyes watching, almost waiting for her to fail. "Your Honor," she began calmly, "I don't have a law degree, but I do have evidence that the submitted tax return was altered and not by Mr. O'Gundy." Linda cut in immediately. "On what authority are you making that legal claim?" The judge raised a hand. "Let her continue. We'll evaluate accordingly." Aaliyah clicked to display an electronic payroll record on the courtroom screen. Mr. O'Gundy's payroll record from last year shows he reported his full income from the store. However, the version submitted to the IRS was sent from an IP address not associated with any of his devices. That IP belongs to the accounting office he hired for assistance. She pressed a key. The screen flashed. IP address, registered to Marcus Bell Accounting, District 12, NYC. Linda frowned, leaning in to whisper to her assistant. "And furthermore," Aaliyah said, voice rising, "the lease for Mr. O'Gundy's shop is set to expire next month. The property owner, Cityland Incorporated, is currently in talks to sell to an investor named Anderson Price. And Mr. Price just happens to be Ms. Linda Carver's brother-in-law." The courtroom erupted. "Objection!" Linda shouted. "Noted," said the judge, though his eyes remained fixed on Aaliyah. "Do you have evidence of this?" Aaliyah nodded, lifting a property record and a shareholder relationship chart. A heavy silence fell over the room. Somewhere in the gallery, someone whispered under their breath, "She knows exactly what she's doing." That evening, Aaliyah sat in the Bedford-Stuyvesant Community Library. She opened her laptop and began printing report after report, forgotten contracts, and emails that had been deleted, but recovered through cash. Each piece of evidence was like a needle, stitching together the outline of a shadowy force tightening its grip on the poor neighborhood. She didn't feel fear, but she did feel the chill, the kind that settles in rooms too quiet before a storm. 9:17 p.m. A message from an unknown number lit up her phone. You know too much. No signature. No punctuation. Just 5 words. But they were enough to make her sit up straight, spine rigid. She called Malik, a former classmate, now an investigative journalist assistant at an independent paper. I need you to verify these files. I need a backup in the cloud that no one can erase. Malik sighed into the phone. Aaliyah, you're up against people with money and power. They don't play fair. I know, she cut in, but I'm not playing. I was never invited to the table. The next morning, she walked into the courthouse with steady steps. But as she entered the courtroom, something was off. Linda Carver was gone. In her place stood a stranger, salt and pepper hair, sleek gray suit, composed yet dangerous. Your Honor, the man spoke. Miss Carver has withdrawn for personal reasons. I'm Harold Price, now representing the prosecution. Aaliyah paused for half a second. Price? That couldn't be a coincidence. The judge glanced at her. Ms. Green, would you like to proceed with your submission? She nodded, took a breath. I present a series of internal emails from Cityland Incorporated outlining a plan to take over the Flatbush corridor. Mr. Ogundy's store is listed as target number 4. The purpose is explicitly stated. Apply financial pressure, audits, and municipal code changes to force tenants out. She held the email up, her hands trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of truth. I'm not doing this to be on the news. I'm not here for applause. I'm here because Mr. Raymond Ogundy has no one else. Just like my mother had no one when her tailor shop was taken from her 10 years ago, through the same tactics. No one laughed. No one cleared their throat. The courtroom was steeped in a choking silence. The judge looked toward the prosecutor. Mr. Price, does the prosecution have a response? Harold Price stood, adjusted his tie, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of panic. We request more time to review. This court will recess for 48 hours, the judge declared. And I'm ordering an independent investigation into all records submitted by Ms. Aaliyah Green. Gavel strike. On her way home, the rain came cold and steady. As Aaliyah stepped into the building's entryway, she saw a thin envelope slide from under her apartment door. Inside was a photo of her mother, taken just the day before at the health clinic. On the back, written in block letters, "Stop, or she's next." Basement apartment, midnight. Rain tapped steadily against the metal roof. Aaliyah placed the photo down on the table. Her hand trembled, but her eyes were sharp. Her mother was still safe for now, but the threat was no longer subtle. They had crossed the line, watching a disabled woman just to scare her daughter into silence. She picked up her phone and called Malik. No answer. She switched to the encrypted line. 3 rings. Then a gravelly, unfamiliar voice spoke. Green, you should walk away. People like you don't belong at this table. I'm not here to play the game, she replied coldly. I'm here to flip the damn table. She hung up. Her fingers immediately sent the files to 3 places. Her cloud backup, Malik's emergency contact, and one unexpected recipient, Deputy Judge Hilliard, the man she used to serve lunch to 3 years ago. The next morning, Aaliyah was jolted awake by a sharp, urgent knock on the door. She opened it and froze in surprise. Mr. Raymond Ogundy stood there, leaning on a cane, eyes blazing. Someone gave me this, he said, voice trembling. From his coat pocket, he pulled a photocopied document, title, Temporary Property Transfer Agreement, forged with his signature. At the bottom, written in red ink, Marcus Bell, his former accountant, and Harold Price, the current prosecutor. Aaliyah's breath caught. This was the smoking gun, connecting City Hall, real estate developers, and the accountant. Who gave this to you? A man in a raincoat. Never said a word. Just left me with one message. Give this to the girl who never lowers her eyes. Aaliyah stepped back, the blood in her face turning to ice. 11 a.m. She walked into the courtroom in a long black coat, a case folder in hand. The courtroom was eerily quiet. No press. No public. Just the judge, Harold Price, and one unexpected face, Deputy Judge Hilliard, seated in the back, arms crossed, eyes steady. Aaliyah didn't greet anyone. She stood tall, looking directly at the judge. "I'm here to present final evidence and request all charges against Mr. Ogundy be dropped. I also formally request a federal investigation." She held up the contract. The document had been signed without Mr. Ogundy's knowledge. Signature analysis showed it had been forged using editing software. The file had been sent from the same IP address as the falsified tax documents. Everything matched. Harold Price jumped up. "It's fake. She fabricated this. That signature can't be verified." From the back, Hilliard's voice rang out, low calm. "I personally verified that signature, and I contacted the Department of Justice at 6 this morning." The courtroom erupted. Harold Price went pale, fumbling for his phone. "We request a continuance." The judge raised a hand. "Continuance was yesterday, Mr. Price." Gavel slam. "This hearing is now elevated to the federal level. All records will be sealed for criminal investigation. Defendant Raymond Ogundy, acquitted of all charges." Aaliyah exhaled for the first time in 2 weeks. From the back row, Judge Hilliard gave her a small nod. "Not everyone cleans dirt with a broom. You used the truth." 1 week after the trial, Aaliyah returned to work at the courthouse. But this time, no one called her the janitor. Every step she took was met not with pity, but with respect. The New York Times called her the quiet defender. And on local forums, people simply wrote, "She didn't need a seat. She brought her own table." Her mother received a formal apology from City Hall. Mr. Ogundy reopened his shop, and Malik, the journalist friend, had started writing his first book, How a Janitor Shook the Legal System. That weekend night, Aaliyah sat on her front stoop, a cup of tea in hand, looking up at the foggy Brooklyn sky. "I'm not a lawyer," she whispered, "but I've learned this. Justice doesn't care who you are. It just waits for someone to stand when no one else will." She smiled, because sometimes it's the invisible ones who leave the most unshakable mark. What part of Aaliyah's story spoke to you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below.